André Janton.
Yes.
Okay, you here, sir? You want to move up?
There's no sir here, but I'm here to represent Andre Genthon, Mr. Genthon.
Okay, can I have your name and your civic address?
My title's Andre Genthon Sovereign.
Okay, and the other thing is that camera, in order to have that in this chamber, we need council permission, and you don't have it. So I would ask you to remove that camera from the room before we proceed. And the one that you're wearing as well.
I did advise that I was going to be recording this, did I not?
Several months ago, yes.
And I was told that that was allowed.
With the permission of council.
All right, so I did my due diligence.
Well, I'll do mine. Is there a mover and a seconder in the room to approve these cameras?
Here we go, a symbol of dignity. There's nothing to hide here. Speaking of a good show.
We're following a process.
Speaking of a good show, I'm not here to create one. I'm not here to create fancy YouTube videos.
Sir, you're not in order. I'm asking you to respect council right now. I'm asking if there could be a motion on the table.
Yes, but I'm not
okay, that's it.
I'm not a sir.
I will ask you to speak, okay? Is there someone that would introduce a motion to approve a camera in the room?
Sure.
Okay, moved by Councilor Volker. Is there a seconder? Councilor Juncker. Okay, discussion. Okay, go ahead.
Is there a procedure for doing that, or?
The procedure in our procedures bylaw is that delegations would provide 48 hours notice requesting, or advising that they would be remembering the meeting.
Okay, so there's no.
Well, Andre did advise me several months ago. He was looking for several dates to appeal the invoice. So I provided those dates, and so he did notify me at that time that one of those dates he would be appearing and videotaping our session. In respect to this specific date, he did confirm his attendance on Friday, that he would be attending. That may be my, I may have erroneously forgotten to ask you whether or not you intended to come and record the meeting.
Okay, so he's in compliance.
Pardon?
He's in compliance. From what you said.
I would think so,
Okay,
yes.
thank you. So we don't need a vote on part of council. Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate, as you were talking about a great show, that's something I'm familiar with, but I didn't come here today for that. This process has been one of the most politically engaging moments of my life that has extended over a year. I'm a passionate being about justice, morality, and dignity. I respect and recognize the purpose of what government is designed to be. However, I observe with the growing number of the people that it's all of our responsibility to maintain balance, especially among leaders. This particular process that I've experienced, for the greater majority of it, I would describe as unbalanced until recently. There appears to be glimmer of hope for dignity. I didn't prepare anything I'm saying right now. As a matter of fact, I had visioned this very much differently. Refreshing the importance of government and leadership. Without it, there would very likely be chaos, dysfunction, and potentially lawlessness. Which, from one perspective, the people can find their way. From another perspective, this is where we are now. If you want to call it reality, how many people, how we interact, the customs, policies, procedures we've adopted or become accustomed to. A lot of times, I think, without question, and that may be where we fall short. So I want to respect your time and not turn this into some sort of a sovereign breakdown. However, one thought did come to mind yesterday as I was reflecting on this, of the symbolism of what might be taking place here, is a synchronization of sorts between jurisdictions. A customary legal jurisdiction with policies, procedures, that you have words that are put in front of you that are your obligation to follow. At the same time, there's a history of another jurisdiction of success that the people can be proud of together. A system that's not divided, and a system that was originally created with the intention for overall peace, well-being, and I would say a natural, balanced sense of direction as people cross paths with each other. I get that we've come a long way, and I observe that the greater majority of people are challenged to think deeply. I can see clearly reasons why. I've probably written about a few. If any of you have taken the time to read it in detail, which at this point, I think there's only one of you that may have done that, you'll see that the rabbit holes that I'm not afraid to follow are vast. However, they are absolutely rooted in peace. Am I on a time limit? Because I'll wrap it up if necessary.
We have 15 minutes, and we need to talk about your invoice for $3,720, and that's what we're here to hear.
Great, thank you. This does tell me a little bit about you, sir, but I will move it along. Perhaps I'll follow the original path I was going to take, and that is that I've taken the time to put this in writing, as the people deserve a public record. Because the people, I think, would do well to remember their individual authority. Having said that, I've already put in writing and clarified most of what I've had to say. I'm not sure how many of you have read it in any detail, because if you did, I probably would have had different responses until recently. It was recommended yesterday by a member. I was just going to say, here it is. Do you have any questions out of what hopefully any of you have done your due diligence to read, to narrow down through my fervor and the stuff that perhaps nobody really wants to think about or talk about on this level on specific questions related to this sales invoice? is recommended by one of your members that perhaps I should focus on one particular point, which I did try to do in the second more detailed registered notice, clarifying the significance of how a squatter in the situation could have created what may have looked like, which, as I review the disclosure and the pictures and such, really, if we're honest, there's a pile of wood burning there on top of muddy ash. There's no garbage burning there. There's some garbage around the outside. So I took some time to explain in the second registered notice, because I'm putting myself in your shoes and I'm thinking, is this guy full of shit? Like, is this guy just, pulling out his best hoops to pull out bullshit, or is there some truth here? And how could this have happened where our firefighters show up and they see what they appear to be certain to see? And if you read their statements, I think after some time of reflection, I don't know if they read my notices or not, but they weren't even sure. And after some reflection, it appears that I'm pretty sure, I'm certain one of them used the word "it appeared" at the time. So with some explanation, the specifics I did elaborate on, so I encourage you to read it so you can get a better sense, but I'm going to try and keep this simple. An individual needs help at COVID. The world's falling apart. I have an open resource. I have this theory of what's easiest to love. Plants are number one, animals are number two, and people, I'm sure we can all just let that be, right? So, rescue for the people, rescue for the animals. Hey, it's a great idea. Yeah, sure, bring a few animals. We can do this. It's a hard time for everyone and everything. Turned into an absolute nut house of animals that wouldn't stop, even with an eviction notice and absolute direction to stop bringing animals to the property. I did elaborate on that in some degree, but anyone who knows me and who's crossed the property knows that I have a deep connection with nature. Things, matters, being, everything is sovereign. And it was absolutely out of balance. I didn't need a council to tell me that, or members in the community. It was already in the process for about a year to try to softly, as peacefully as possible, evict what was going on to something that was out of control, including a loop program. Is anybody here familiar with loop, just so I can save some explanation? Loop, okay, Loop is a program for superstores. They used to send a semi-truck full of garbage to the dump every week, every one of them. So they finally got a program for farmers, people who had animals, where you could collect their stuff, which is some packaged, some fresh produce, a little bit of everything. So you maybe heard of it, and you can feed your farm animals. So it's food to farm program, and there's no cost to it. The only responsibility is processing the garbage. Now, normally, if you only have a few animals, that's very easy to maintain, and most people, visit smaller towns, and they get like a small truckload. When you go to the city and go to Superstore, you're getting a trailer load of stuff. So there was cardboard to deal with, and there was the packaged stuff. Now, we would put that stuff in the garbage. With the abundance of animals, which I did elaborate on, donkeys, geese, everything, they would literally, the dogs, would just go in there, and all over the entire yard was garbage all the time, which is part of why this had been going on for a year to try to evict this. It's like this is beyond out of balance, and we need to bring it back into balance for our own property, for surrounding properties. We had to put a fence up so the animals wouldn't go out. If you ask anyone in town, they'd probably have similar stories like this. Probably not the full perspective from their own observations and where gossip takes things, but the core facts of what was happening was it needed to come back in balance, and I knew this. So this is a process that was taking place. Now, how can you have just a little bit of garbage around the pit? I mean, if it was daytime, they would have seen the full perspective of the yard, and it probably would have been a bit more obvious that, well, there's pieces of garbage everywhere.
Okay.
Well,
Okay, Mr. Janton.
you're not speaking to Mr. Gentham, but yes.
This invoice was submitted on the advice of the fire chief,
Yes.
and he's duly qualified under and mandated by this council to do that. So there's an existing invoice for $3,720, and that's what we're here to discuss today.
Yeah. So the roots of it, though, the origin of it, is it valid? Is it? So yeah, that's what we're here to discuss.
That came under the auspices of the fire chief.
So where is he?
I believe is fully qualified to do.
So where is he? Isn't that what communities do? Let's have a conversation and figure this out.
Well, we're having the conversation.
Right, but do you see the disconnect here? Like, we're, as adults and leaders...
Do you want to speak? speak to that invoice, or yes or no?
We're trying to do that, right? I would think, like, I would call everyone involved and say, hey, this is.
I'm giving you the opportunity to speak to the invoice.
Am I missing something here? Is that not what I'm doing?
So maybe I need to clarify a little bit. I did advise
Right.
Andre that coming forward in front of council here to share some information that perhaps wasn't obvious in that evening, as he's saying it was dark and
Okay.
the squatter, you know, all those kinds of information. We didn't have that at the time that we made a decision, and so I invited him here to explain that to us. So I did expect that it would probably take a little more than 15 minutes if we're to
Good with
accommodate.
that? Okay.
I think I could say something a little bit more, though, putting myself in your shoes, which I've done my entire life. Any situation you're in a challenge, put yourself in the shoes, which really, I know I get a little excited, but that's just the assertiveness. It'll never cross over into aggression. We're not going to start shooting people and dropping bombs. This is the most peaceful assertion of sovereignty that there can be. But in a normal world, like I've used the analogy of kids playing in the playground, invite the fire chief here and they say, okay, so, which is what I've said from the beginning, let's send the fire chief down, let's have a conversation. And the gentleman who first saw what he may have thought was a cause for concern, which I would say what he probably saw, or what someone probably saw, because it's essentially a hole in the ground, and after rain, it's a swampy water pit. So to try to get any fire started is a challenge in that. Now, having said that, through this process, I've reflected more and narrowed down what is defined as an open fire. In my mind, from the first fire call, there was a fire ban that had just finished. I didn't even know what the definition of an open fire was. You're talking to a guy who's grown up on the lake, who had, you know, responsible fires always. We had firefighters around us. It wasn't out of my norm to do this. So the first one was like a big debris of bushes, and the firefighter's like, hey, you know, you can't open fires. And so I thought, okay, the message to me was have smaller fires and don't, you know, because yeah, things can get, and there's bushes around, and it made sense at the time. So smaller fires. What led to the impression of this being a bigger fire? Because of the condition of it was, we used some cardboard to try and get it started. So they probably saw at the beginning of the initial trying to get it started a little bit larger than what I would have considered still. Now that I know what you're defining as an open fire is, which is literally an enclosed everything, ashes, almost similar to a chimney, outdoor chimney, which would be the most ideal, safest situation, which I can come to comply with. I may want to build a bigger one, but whatever it is, I can find a balance. But now through this process, I've evaluated and I've sort of reflected, as any leader should, what was the disconnect there? And was this necessary, this invoice necessary? Absolutely not. Did it come through on a recommendation based on a little bit of a process, maybe with a spice of ego? I think so. Maybe with a misunderstanding of sovereignty. You know, does this guy get to just do whatever he wants and disobey? That's not what was happening. There's no direct intention to, you know, there's none of that. I mean, it's come to that because as I'm observing this process, I'm like, man, is it ever hard to communicate with politics? You know, like I'd love to go back to the playground and talk to the people, talk to the kids, talk to the fire chief, which hopefully will come forward through this. So the intention, there was no direct intention. I get now from your perspective what you can say, well, still, Andre, even if you weren't burning garbage, it was still an outdoor fire. I get what you would say. I get what you're saying. I now get that. But it took a couple moments of communicating to make that work. And that's been my point from the beginning, is that the hammer, the dollar hammer, and I sit here, listen to you guys talk about budget, and I appreciate that's where we are. And I'll just throw in there, you remove money, greed, and profit from any problem in the entire world and it goes away. So I'm just going to throw that in there. I know we're all conditioned and that's a deep rabbit hole for anyone to follow, but that particular form of communicating, especially with people like me that get this, and who are of and for the people and dignity and balance and peace, and that includes sometimes being forced to do these things that may be uncomfortable, that's absolutely what I'm all about. So the boldness of the sales invoice was just that, extremely bold. When communication, if you can communicate with people, And I think that's where the recommendation and stuff may have come in. Well, hey, there's been one before, let's hit them with this. And I did have a question, because it seems there was only 3 of these in the last year, and there was no invoices in years prior. So I'm kind of curious what's changed, what sort of direction has changed. Is that from possibly new leadership? I don't know. But I would be curious, and maybe that's not something we'll talk about today, and I'll just follow up with you. I'm probably just ask for more information, just because maybe we can catch a bad habit before it starts. Like, these are some pretty big bills, and mine's on there, or Andre Joseph Genthon's is on there, and it seems to be a new practice. So maybe we're all doing ourselves a favor by meeting here today, and we can find ways to redefine and rebalance what that looks like. Government with the people, and then there's the legal lawful synchronization, which means basically trying to hold the dignity of talking to the people if possible first. If you're dealing with a lunatic, and I've said this in private court meetings in the justice system, to create a list, sovereigns with integrity and sovereigns with anything less, because that could be kind of dangerous if they're not balanced and they don't understand this. So that's where I'm at. There was no intention to do this. And what would have solved it is the firefighter who saw it. If a safety check, if you read the 911 call, the 911 caller seems to have embellished it in their own weird way, which I could only read in writing, the transcript of what was said on the call, and it didn't even sound like the caller was themselves really were that concerned. They said they wanted a safety check, was the words that they used, and somehow through that, the 911 caller said something like, "Do you want me to dispatch?" And it seemed as though there was like a, well, I guess so. So I even have some sympathy for the caller that was probably just trying to do their best as a firefighter and protect the community. I get all of that. Like, if you could see my hair, it's standing up right now. I get it all. But what would have solved it is community, dignity, communication. Stop in. It's a construction fence. Like, you can easily open it, and we did it for the animals. It's not for some sort of, sovereign wall. I'd probably build a wall if that was the case and I was crazy on that level, right? What would have helped is to just pull up and say, hey, what's going on? You guys, and the truth of it isn't all there either. That's why I think there might be some ego, because the lights were on and it said there was no people around, and my son was working outside at the garage. Like, they told me everything. By the time I got to observe everything, it's like I knew the pilot was there because I helped the cleanup. You know what I mean? I knew what was there. And it's not uncommon for my kids to have fires either. So just all of it didn't seem like there was a full, if everyone was standing here, I'd look in their eyes and say, come on, guys, why didn't you just come in? And in the future, please do. And well, there won't be the future, because I'm already much more diligent on how being aware of what you define as an open fire. And it's easy to find balance. Like I said, I'd probably just want to build a bigger cement mortar, have fun, learn some masonry or something, turn it into a life experience, like kids in the park. Thank you. I would like to provide this, though, just so you have a record of a record that I would also be providing for the people. I'm hoping for a conclusion with dignity here.
Thank you. Yep, we'll take your any questions for Mr. Gunkel? Go ahead.
It's not Mr. Genthon, yeah, but please, yeah.
I just was, you were in your lead up of what was occurring. You were talking about what you were burning, but you never kind of got quite to it. Just wondering, so what were you burning?
Right. So if you look at the pictures, there's logs of wood. There was also pieces. One of the things that I do as a landscaper is I quite often have to clean up from new builds. And new builds have clean, unfinished, all that kind of wood. So we bring it back. We've constructed, as part of these animals coming, we constructed a couple farm sheds, and it's all free supply. So that was kind of the motivation to, charge them a little to take home some really good stuff that you could build with, because the builders use what they use. The rest of it ends up in a pile. The stuff that's really small is perfect for a fire. Stuff that's bigger you can use to build. Because all of these projects were sort of just left in the chaotic for a year of eviction, everything was all over. So the excitement, like if you see my front yard, I don't know if any of you have seen my yard before, but if you see my front yard, it's basically a paradise park. You got to make your home where your heart is. The back is where the nightmare was, managed to keep most of the animals back there. So the excitement to finally have that gone and get on the cleanup was, gratification cannot be understated here. We wanted to get at it. So literally all the garbage we started, I put in the second notice, the power blowers, part of landscaping, me and my son and one other, we got power blowers, and we literally that's part of the reason we had to put up the fence, because the garbage was going in the neighbor's yard. Neighbor Sheila was like, hey man, doing this and that and the animals, so okay, let's try and keep peace in the community. All of that got out of balance. So that's where the wood came from, and just some branches, whatever that was burnable could go in that pile. Anything that's not burnable. So the power blowers are going from all outside corners, blowing to the center, because it's a central area. So in our mind, a little bit of garbage left. If you could have observed the amount of garbage that was there all the time, that to us was really clean at that point. Like a couple little pieces left from after the cleanup, And like my daughter said, I said, well, there might have been a piece like close enough where part of it had burnt, but there wasn't an intentional throw the garbage into the pit and leave whatever garbage was in there. As a matter of fact, we would diligently pick out anything that is not wood burnable. So but the cardboard, that was in your notice, don't burn cardboard. And I said, that's ridiculous. Cardboard has always been taught right from Scouts as a limited fire starter to help you start a fire, which I still do. But now I don't do like it was before, like use it as bigger fires, and it's in a smaller container, and yeah, we rip up a piece to get it started. That's something like that, but not to the point of toxic smoke and irritating neighbors and all of that. So the process has been deeply unbalanced. At the same time, that's part of life. Nobody said it's going to be easy. So even if it was a little uncomfortable for me to reflect through the political shoes.
But so what you're saying is, for the most part, in that pit you were burning wood, like branches, wood cutoffs or construction cutoffs, and cardboard.
Yeah, and look at the pictures. Like you can see wood, and I know there's a pile in the it's nighttime, and it looks like there's a lump in the middle, but that is like ash and mud, because we'd often just like shovel up the surrounding area of the fire pit, so it was like a little bit of a heap of stuff. And every once in a while, I'd take my bobcat, shovel that out, mix the soil with the vegetables or whatever, the ash for the nitrogen and all of that stuff. So. But all around there was like wet, soggy everything. And then outside of that is the limestone, and where the garbage is, like, it's in the picture, it's clear to see. It's just, if it was daytime, I think a lot of this would be easier to visualize. In particular, if there was any video that your people had taken, that would probably help too, because you might catch some of the condition of the yard and still see some of the good wood that we saved that's big enough. But really it was the cleanup that was long overdue, and it was a cleanup that took place almost every day, definitely once a week, a massive cleanup. But this was the last one because we had officially evicted the squatter, which was a nasty process in itself, which may have drawn concerns for the community, because there was law enforcement there that showed up. Like, she put her feet in the ground like a stubborn little toddler and made up a lot of stories that abused a lot of resources. That's why I wasn't sure if even this was that. Like, when the fire department showed up, everybody was like, what are you doing here? Even Curtis's statement, like, he didn't even see anything of concern, and he has a direct path to see the pit. So I'm pretty sure what happened is one firefighter saw the beginning of a relatively smaller fire that never would have been a concern. In summary, everything happens for a reason. I learned more exactly what you're defining as an open fire. I'm open to constructing a pit. I'm absolutely not open to money, greed, or profit, or the legal approach to try to communicate, because those policies can be valuable to the people who require it, that don't know how to communicate and don't have leadership skills. I don't think it should be a first approach. I think we should maintain our dignity together as much as possible and communicate like that as often as possible first. For example, something like this happens in the future, because I see a trend starting here of big invoices. Well, let's teach them. Let's just send them a bill and they'll get their act together, right, guys and gals? Not quite. Like, hey, listen, neighbors have given us notice, or firefighters have noticed this, that this and that. So we're sending you notice from the municipality. specifically, this is why we need you not to do that. This is why this has happened. Maybe a template letter that would explain, because communication, I think, would settle a lot of people. The people who try to fight government, I think it's the style of how it comes across that ruffles up the feathers, right? But if you just say, hey, we're government, this is why we're doing what we're doing, and if you don't heed this notice, then you're going to expect this, and then articulate, fine, a clear list of harsh fines, especially after receiving that peaceful notice, but make it clear. And I think with a first approach like that, it's just going to make communities stronger. It'll make people respect the balance between what government's supposed to be more. So those are some thoughts that come to mind and through this process. Some of the stuff I've put up at the end of my driveway, yeah, it's a little bit sassy, but honestly, what do you do when it seems like communication's not an option, but to bring forward a little bit of a sort of sassiness? And I'm willing to pull that back, of course, because I too desire a return to balance in the community where I be. So.
Councilor McGregor.
So was this the first time that you had opened fire that it was reported?
It was the second time. The first time was a few years prior to that. It was during the year of a fire ban. Actually, there's probably been fire bans all the time. I just learned to pay more. From the first time, I learned, the message I got was, so the fire ban had just expired. So I watched nature, right? Because I didn't even know that there was this concept of fire ban and how to go to the municipality. I'm coming from country, and I think a lot of people don't realize that. You may assume it's a normal thing that they know. So the very first time the fire ban was on, but it had just finished because we got a whole bunch of rain. And obviously the authorities that be agreed because it was only hours after they showed up that the fire ban was lifted. So in my mind, I knew there was this pile that was building, that I didn't even know about an open fire at that point. There's this big pile building of twigs and branches, because I'm nature, I trim my trees, I want my yard to look nice, it happens, right? Which I've also read. You generally prefer not to burn that stuff too. I've caught those messages. But that's what was happening at the time. I watched nature, it just poured. I knew there was no danger of fire. Me and Mama are pretty close. Mother's Day, my feet are in the ground. You know what I'm saying? Like, I get it. I knew there wasn't going to be a fire, safe time to light it. Fire department's like, okay, no, you can't do this. This is da-da-da. This is what you can't have open fires. And in my mind, that meant at that time, oh, so just bring it down, Andre. You're making people nervous with your habits that you've had naturally from growing up. So that was the plan. And that was the lesson learned from there. But I didn't quite capture the whole, actual metal or some sort of masonry enclosure with, a thing for sparks or a cover, depending on the ranking of. Yeah. So that to me didn't really count, like in my mind, as a first notice toward, hey, this is the importance of all of that, and absolutely no fire, open fire, generally any time, unless, of course, I guess there's some sort of application process. If you for some reason have a big pile that you want to burn, the fire department will come check it out or something and tell you what they need to tell you, yes or no, whatever.
So then, on the first visit from the fire department, they never explained to you what an open pit or an open fire was?
Not in detail. It was in the letter afterwards that just said no open fires, and to me it wasn't clear. And maybe it was written clearly, but in my mind, as I recall it, the lesson learned was tone it down. Don't have big fires. You got a hole in the ground. To me, that's I would say that qualifies as an enclosed fire pit, because it's a hole in the ground more than 10 feet away, and everything in my non-clear mind, or perhaps didn't pay as close attention at the time, it was acceptable. So there was no intention to, continue to have massive fires that will cause a concern. Now I know that
the definition of a closed-in fire, there's actually a definition of that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that if they sent you a letter saying no open fires, I'm sure they would have sent you something saying this is what you're able to do within village limits or whatever. Did they not or not?
I do remember a follow-up letter in the mail saying that, yeah, this is what it is. The way I perceived that, is what I'm saying, was not as clear as this interaction.
Okay.
Anyone else, any questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Mr. Janton, and excused. We will debate this and we will advise you of our decision.
Thank you. No disrespect, sir. I get the impression that you have not read the documentation. It's probably because you're busy, and I respect that, but the fact that you keep calling me Mr. Genthon, I find it deeply disrespectful, and if you do choose to read the disclosure, I think you might understand why. Again, no disrespect. It would be best if we had an understanding of our sovereign capacity. We're all sovereign at the root. If you choose to operate in a different capacity as a sir or a madam or something like that, that's up to you, but we shouldn't disrespect our root essential sovereign capacity. I'm no better or worse than you. That's not what I'm trying to do here, but the fact that people avoid sovereignty to that level or just disrespect it, it's actually an insult to all of us. Peace to you all. Thank you for this. Thank you. And thank you for the dignity of allowing this. I think we have put forward an opportunity to, should this become a public record, to defend our dignity as the people. Thank you.